conflicted.
Give me the meat.
Go back to the book, go back to the book, go back to the book.
I can feel the legs and the throat.
You know, Isildur wakes up in a spider cape and has to fight Shelob in the first sequence, so...
What am I to call you?
I am your partner. A sharer of gifts.
Nerdrotic.com.
Greetings, you over 1 million hellions and the 40% who haven't subscribed yet. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a bad couple of weeks for the message, but a great couple of weeks for humanity. For example, the game Concord from Sony with characters like this, positively oozing with DEI, that was in production for 8 years and cost over $100 million to make, was canceled within 2 weeks of its release. And right around the same time, in their infinite wisdom, Disney and Ubisoft decided to release Star Wars Outlaws with Ma'am Solo. And this will come as a shock to no one. It's a massive disappointment. Speaking of disappointments, people are still upset about the cancellation of The Acolyte, including YouTube channels that decided to hitch their wagon to one franchise, Disney Star Wars, and somehow they're trying to make it our fault. That's the Royal Hour, by the way, and despite Disney saying that they canceled The Acolyte due to low ratings, let me be very clear. Ladies, I'm with ya. Hashtag renew The Acolyte. Let's go, girls. And last and very least, for now anyway, this brings us to the Rings of Power, which apparently lost, surprisingly enough, well over 50% of its audience from season 1. And I can hear you now, wasn't it reported that the Rings of Power lost 63% of their audience here in the States over the course of the season? Yes. While Samba TV's ratings don't cover everything a show is viewed on, the percentages remain the same. The Rings of Power Season 1 episode was watched by 1.8 million people over 4 days, averaging 450,000 viewers a day. The Rings of Power Season 2 premiere episode was watched by 902,000 people over 5 days, averaging 180,400 a day. Take away that extra day and it was watched by 721,600 people, which unfortunately for Amazon is a loss of 60%. So let's talk about the Rings of Power Season 2. The good news is we're halfway through the season. The bad news is we're only halfway through the season. Previously on the Rings of Power.
The Eastar will surrender to me. Because if he doesn't, I will slaughter the halflings he calls friends.
Sounds good to me.
Are nearly complete, Lord Father. Must we go to war again?
We'll never truly be safe until we've made certain Sauron is no more.
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys!
Since the wearing of this ring, I have perceived glimpses of the unseen world.
Well, to plead with you to make rings for men.
Rings for men.
Okay, everyone, let's get started. Yes, beautiful, feeling it. Let's get some smiles. It's all in here. That's it, yes. Let's let the inside out. Okay, you're an animal. Yes, there we go. You're a tiger. I'm not even shooting you. It's crazy. And I'm spent.
Worry not, my brother.
For I am a master of disguises.
Elrond's task is not to join your company, but to lead it.
Down with the patriarchy. That's the message.
After discovering that the most important messages sent in Middle-earth in over half a millennia haven't made it, warning Grandma Brimbor that Sauron is on his way back to Eregion to forge more rings.
Our letters to Celebrimbor have all gone unanswered. I fear Sauron may be in Eregion. The High King has consented to send me and a small party there to ensure Celebrimbor and his city are safe.
After being talked into it by Galadriel, High District Manager Gil-galad finally decides to do something about it by demoting her and promoting Doogie Elrond.
We fixed the glitch.
Who immediately asks for help.
We shall need an archer, 2 swordsmen. I trust you can recommend a set.
Now you'd think after they pretty much confirmed Sauron is returning to Eregion, there would be some sort of sense of urgency, but no, Galadriel still needs to pick a team.
Yes, I can recommend an archer and 2 swordsmen.
Now this is a pretty important mission. You'd think she'd at least pick 100 of the best and brightest. 50 wouldn't be so bad. 25 would be really pushing it.
Nope, just 4.
And after a transitional scene in a show that's already ripped off dialogue and scenes from Peter Jackson's The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, why not rip off a shot? And later on, we find out Galadriel picked 4 of the best archers and swordsmen from your local Starbucks. Props to X-Ray Girl for making the team. And they're off to Eregion until they come up on a bridge that Detective Doogie Elrond thinks is destroyed by lightning.
Lightning.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
But Lieutenant Galadriel quickly surmises it's Sauron, and then her ringy senses tingling. And not to worry, despite being handed some humiliation and a very temporary demotion, making you think that they might be steering Galadriel back into her graceful Lady of Light form, insufferable girl boss Galadriel makes her triumphant return this episode.
This company will not take counsel from that trinket. If you cannot abide by those terms, you will leave now and return to Lindon.
I should like to, because I do not wish to see any of this company slain, including you.
Ah yes, Galadriel and Elrond bickering for an entire episode. So Tolkienian. It reminds me of that deleted scene from Lord of the Rings.
You're a real hooker, and I'm gonna slap you in public.
You have man boobs.
I'm gonna punch you in the ovary. That's what I'm gonna do. A straight shot.
Ooh, ow.
Right to the baby maker.
And just when you thought this show couldn't sink any lower, it's time for some more creatively bankrupt repurposing within creatively bankrupt repurposing. Despite showrunners J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay saying that they're going to make the Tolkien novel that he never wrote, these creative geniuses are just going to copy and paste events from the books in the Third Age and force them into this fanfic fever dream. But there's a twist. They're going to do what Peter Jackson didn't do. I would argue they've already done that. Peter Jackson made a good Lord of the Rings adaptation, and J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay made the worst adaptation of all time. And these outright thieves get right to work. This brings us to Tom Bombadil and the Barrow-wights, characters and events from the books that were famously left out of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. Let's start with the merry fellow, Tom Bombadil, master of wood, water, and hill, and quite possibly one of the first beings to roam Middle-earth in his summer home in Rhûn. He runs into Dangalf, and just in case Peter Jackson was feeling left out, don't worry, mate. Be prepared for some whiplash because this is repurposing squared. Peter Jackson repurposed events featuring Tom Bombadil from the books for Treebeard and the Two Towers. The Rings of Power repurposed those same events featuring Tom Bombadil from the books and put them in the Second Age.
What's happening? Mary! He copied my whole flow! Word for word, bar for bar!
And then the Rings of Power repurposed shots from Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, who was repurposing events featuring Tom Bombadil in the books.
You should not be working.
You should not be waking.
Eat earth.
Eat earth.
Dig deep.
Dig deep.
Drink water.
Drink water.
Go to sleep.
He copied my whole flow!
I know, subtle. I don't know why the very litigious Warner Brothers isn't suing someone at this point. And I can hear the Rings of Power stands now. It's totally different from the books. It's not Old Man Willow, it's Old Man Ironwood.
Even your tree out there, Old Man Ironwood.
Great, maybe next episode, Tom Bombadil will introduce us to another tree, Old Man Morningwood. Unfortunately, the character assassination doesn't end there. Old Tom Bombadil from the books is so aloof, the Council of Elrond considered giving him the One Ring, but decided against it because he'd forget about it. The Rings of Power Tom Bombadil, who we will now call Tom Groombadil, is a slightly more predatorial Yoda. And it sounds like old Dangalf wants to learn a little bit more than magic.
Might you teach me how to wield a staff?
Clean your hands, wash your face, and come join me by the fire.
I was never meant to find a staff under these stars.
I was meant to find you, wasn't I?
You're not the first Eastar who's eaten honey by my fire.
Years ago, there was another, the Dark Wizard.
And you heard that right. The other Eastar that ate honey by Tom Bombadil's fire went to the dark side. He lost a Padawan, who just so happens to be the Dark Wizard that's totally not supposed to remind us of Saruman. This brings us to the next series of Third Age events repurposed from the books. And yes, I'm fully aware that I'm saying the word repurposed a lot because they're doing it a lot. The Barrow Downs and the Barrow-wights. Now, in Professor Tolkien's masterful work, Tom Bombadil saves Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, who succumbed to the Barrow-wights, and quite frankly, this is something I wish Peter Jackson put in his Lord of the Rings. In the Rings of Power, we have the elven baristas, Doogie Elrond and Warrior Galadriel fighting them because we need a battle scene. But I have to admit that it's an interesting choice that for the second season in a row, they put the Elf of Color in chains.
Don't let go!
The black guy always dies first.
After losing an elven red shirt, we find out it was the Barrow-wights that killed the guy who had the most important message in Middle-earth in half a millennia, telling Celebrimbor that Sauron is back.
The king sent a dispatch to warn Celebrimbor. This dispatch.
Now, the show would like you to believe that ending up in the Barrow Downs is all Doogie Elrond's fault for not listening to Guy Ladriel's ringy sense.
We won't reach anywhere at speed if we walk into a trap.
We go south.
Commander, I must protest.
Your opinion on the matter has been heard.
Elrond.
Opinion heard, Lieutenant.
When in truth, it's Guy Ladriel's fault because she didn't tell anybody when she had a chance that Sauron was back. Anyway, Tom Bombadil wasn't hanging around in Rune training wizards in magic and losing a Padawan to the dark side. No one knew what the Astari or wizards were in the Second Age. Gandalf wasn't in the Second Age. How in the hell would Guy Ladriel know who the Barrow-wights are?
What are they? Barrow-wights.
Because they didn't arrive until the Third Age, like Gandalf, but I don't even know why I bother. Speaking of things that don't belong in this show, let's go to female Sam and female Frodo, who we last saw getting sucked up by a dirt devil, and unfortunately they survived. They run into what Amazon contractually cannot call hobbits. These are the Stoors, the ancestors of Frodo, including this guy.
Buckwheat? Yeah!
Buckwheat, which interestingly enough would probably work as a hobbit name, takes female Sam and female Frodo to their local village. And when Amazon's given an opportunity to correctly portray the diversity that Tolkien accounted for in his books, no, we get multicultural Stoors, who, like the Harfoots, are a bunch of little assholes who eventually show them that there's a Shire prophecy. But we did get one step closer to figuring out the big mystery over a season and a half. What's Dangolf's name? But first, I have to acknowledge that I missed a hint in the 3-episode premiere.
Really lose control again without a Gand.
Shall we find a Gand? There's plenty of sticks all over the place.
Okay, so Not Frodo has just indirectly confirmed that Not Gandalf is in fact Gandalf.
Well done on Johnny Law for catching that, and sorry, no, I don't speak fluent stage Irish. As Johnny correctly points out in his video, Gandalf is derived from Norse mythology. The word Gand or Gandir means essentially magic staff mixed with elf. Gandalf. But if that wasn't on the nose for you enough, well, there's this.
This friend of yours, who is he anyways?
He's a giant.
Oh, like an elf?
Bigger than that.
Oh, so he's a great big grand elf.
Know what I mean? Nudge, nudge.
Maybe by the end of the season, we'll find out Dangolf's name, and then the next mystery will be who's the Dark Wizard. Yes, there is another storyline in this slog that's barely worth mentioning. Girl Sildor and Don Lemonless, who are in search of Theo. You remember Theo, the son of Bronwyn, the Middle-earth dispensary owner who died. He and the other wild men were captured by the Ents and put in tree cages. And despite the giant gaping holes, nobody bothers to escape. Now some other stuff happened, but it's not worth talking about because in truth, this scene only exists to do this. Remember the Fellowship of the Rings?
What was that?
There are nameless things in the deep places of this world.
There are older and fouler things than orcs in the deep places of the world.
There is another reason these scenes exist, so we can get more shipping, hooking up Estrid, the completely made-up character by Amazon, and Isildur. How do I know this? Well, it comes directly from the ex-Twitter account of Amazon's The Rings of Power.
I acrimoniously loathe shipping in all its manifestations and always have done so since I grew old and wary enough to detect its presence.
Anywho, they eventually catch up to the Ents and free Theo. Now prepare yourselves, I'm about to give the Rings of Power a compliment. The Ents look pretty good, especially in the scene where the Ent husband gets cucked by Don Lemonless.
Tell me, Shotzi, is it true what they say about the way you people are gifted?
Now back to the Elven Away team with Doogie Elrond and Guy Ladriel, who can apparently force heal elves now.
That's not how the ring works.
And it was noble of Guy Ladriel to give up the ring to Doogie Elrond and send the elves away so she could have a solo female empowerment moment. And we also got an inversion of this scene.
I am not alone.
I stand alone.
But this is the moment you've all been waiting for. Galadriel, as she's described in the books. Tall, grave, and beautiful, she was clad wholly in white, with hair of deep gold, and no sign of age was upon her, unless it were the depths of her eyes, for these were keen as lancers in the starlight, and yet profound with the wells of deep memory. Came to kick some ass! really like how she discovered napalm powers by shooting 2 arrows through a campfire and a couple of lanterns. Think about all the orc fathers who aren't coming home tonight. Unfortunately, our girl boss warrior guy Ladriel gets caught by Adar, but lives to repurpose more Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings in future episodes. As many have said before, The Rings of Power is a pointless fan fiction following uninteresting characters mostly made up by Amazon through a series of events to get to the next member berries. And it's a damn shame we live in a timeline where more care is given to the unfinished works of George R. R. Martin, whose latest excuse for not finishing The Winds of Winter is the rise of fascism, than the works of the great Professor Tolkien, who actually fought in a war and wrote Lord of the Rings during World War II. But it's a surprise to absolutely no one that so far Season 2 has been a massive flop, and I don't expect those ratings to go up anytime soon or ever. And despite all the spin you're going to hear, years down the road when this all dies down, the only thing that will be remembered about the Rings of Power is it was the biggest, most expensive bust of all time. And it has everything to do with incompetence, creative bankruptcy, ego, hubris, and messing with the wrong fandom.
Nerdrotic.com.
If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.
Cast it into the fire! Destroy it!